ॐ श्रीहरिं परमानन्दम् उपदेष्टारम् ईश्वरं व्यापकं सर्वलोकानां कारणं तं नमाम्यहम्. Last week we had two classes on Shankaracharya's Aparokshanubhuti, and in that we discussed, as usual, Anuvandha Chatushtaya in respect of Aparokshanubhuti, and then we tried to study the first three shlokas also. Now, while discussing Anubandha Chatushtaya, the subject matter was to be discussed. So we discussed it with the help of the name Aparokshanubhuti. And in that connection, we thought of Pramana Mimamsa, epistemology. How we know what are our means of knowledge in this world, and out of them what will apply to the knowledge of reality. During that, I said that other than Pratyaksha Anubhav, we have Anuman, deductive logic, Upaman, comparison, Arthapatti, inductive logic, Anupalapti, non-availability, Shabda Praman, the verbal testimony. And in that we said there is the Vedic verbal testimony. And I tried to explain it, all the means. But some of you have asked a question. That question is difference between Anuman and Arthapatti. Both appear to be logic, and I named as deductive and inductive logic. Now, I will explain it. It's very easy to understand why they are separate. In the Anuman, that means after Pratyaksha Praman this comes. For that, what is necessary? We have seen in our house or anywhere, example I am giving, fire and smoke existing together. Sometimes we have seen not together, one after the other. We have seen clouds and then rain. Now, we see smoke on the hill. We do not see fire. We see hill, we see smoke. Because we have seen smoke and fire together, we infer, we deduce from this that there is a fire also on the hill. Because we have seen rain comes after cloud, so whenever we see cloud or whenever we see rain, there must be cloud. Whenever we see cloud, we'll think there may be rain. This is Anumana Praman. Now in Arthapatti, we do not see two things together. The example I gave was Devadatta, a man known to us. We see that he become fatter and fatter, and we do not see that he eats food in the daytime. Now what have we seen together? We have not seen him eating. We have not seen him eating in the night because it is night. And we have never seen anywhere eating night coupled with fatness. We have never seen anywhere not eating in the day and fatness. So what have we seen together? Nothing. But we see he is becoming fat. We assume something to explain this observed fact. We assume that he must be taking food in the night, that is why he is becoming fat. So big difference have you seen? Not that we see things together and from that we deduce that when one thing is there, the other also will be there. Here we do not see anything together and we do not deduce anything. We assume some fact to explain the observed fact. This is Arthapatti. In English we say inductive logic. Now this may be wrong in many cases, mind you. He may have some other reason. For example, suppose he has been treated with steroid, he can go bad. Many things are there and we make big mistakes. We see our friend behaving in a particular way and we assume this must be the cause, while he has completely different cause. But that is how we think and that is how we live in this world. Now many times it comes correct, does not mean always it will come correct. So all these are methods of indirect knowledge. And then we thought that the direct knowledge which we call direct, that also explained in the Vedantic fashion, the real fashion, that consciousness is only one without a second. We have a mind of our own. The consciousness reflects on that mind. Immediately it becomes bipolar wave. One pole of the wave is I, the other pole of the wave may remain in the mind. Then we directly are aware that our mind is happy or miserable or etc. etc. But the wave, the other pole of the wave, may travel through one of our five organs of perception. And if it travels through the eyes and falls upon an object, then we see that object. And this knowledge comes to us directly, we assume. If that wave, other pole of the wave, goes through our nose and falls on some object, we smell that object. If it goes through our skin and goes on an object, we touch that object. If it grows through the eyes, then we see. If it goes through the ears, we hear. If it goes through our tongue on an object, then we taste it. So this is the Vedantic explanation of the direct perception of man. But here, two things are intervened, the mind and a particular organ. And through this we see the whole world. We analyze the world as objects. We see, hear, touch, feel the whole world. But our organ of perception, what distortion it has brought, we do not know. Our mind, what distortion it has brought, we do not know. And the German philosopher Kant analytically proved that our mind consists of time, space and causation. This is known to Vedanta long back. Vedanta calls it Desha Kala Nimitta. Now whenever we try to know an object, our mind and our indriyas are thrown on it. Even if we imagine, think, logic, then our mind is thrown on it. And whatever is projected in the mind of time, space and causation, whatever is caught in that net, that much only we perceive. So everything becomes colored by our mind. And that is why even perception differs between two people with the minds of different type. So, what the rishis perceive? Their pure mind does not work as an intermediary. And they perceive the world is to be full of God. So, this so-called direct perception has been proved to be indirect. But we do not want to go into the indirect means. They are already indirect. And we also saw that the indirect perception, now whether it is direct is really direct or not is a different question. But the indirect perceptions have no power to remove the effect of direct perception on our life. What could remove it? And that is why intellectually we may all understand Brahma Satya Jagan Mithya. It does not touch our life at all. And that is why there may be millions of Vedantists without any experience in life. What it is that can obviate the effect of this so-called direct perception? That day I told only one thing, but there are two things. One thing in the Vedantic terminology is called Alaukika Pratyaksha. We discussed this point during Patanjali Sutras. Example, Swami Vivekananda is sitting in meditation. These are various types. Swami Vivekananda is sitting in meditation and he directly perceives some people talking such and such thing at some great distance. His eyes or ears have not reached there, but he is directly aware. Now, because of his scientific nature of the mind, that is believing in this gross world, he goes there to verify. And he finds, yes, they are talking on this very subject. This is one type of alaukika pratyaksha. Other type, during meditation, the level of Sri Ram Krishna's or anybody's experience heightens. And there he sees the Lord Krishna playing. He feels Lord Krishna is his friend. He feels Lord Krishna is his lover, he is the beloved. And he feels it very directly. Very directly, mind you, much more direct than our direct perception. And this we call Bhava Samadhi. And this has the power to obviate the effect of our direct perception. Now, sometimes we see that, sometimes we do not see. So, some doubt happens. When we see it again and again, then we become more sure of that perception than our direct perception. And that is what all the Vedas have come out. The rishis or consciousness associated with fire, water, tree, everything. And so we get this Vriksha Devata, Vana Devata, Jala Devata, Vayu Devata, Griha Devata, Vastu Devata. These are direct perceptions, more direct than our direct perception. And they remove the effect of our direct perception, and we start feeling this world is not so real as we think. What we perceive during real meditation, not imagination, real meditation, we perceive these things and they are more real than the present life. This comes to us because of our habit of this perception for lives together. In the beginning, we doubt that perception. But when it comes, we feel it is much more direct than our direct perception. And when it comes repeatedly, we understand why we say this is real and that is not real. That is more real. And then it obviates our direct perception. Everything is obviated. This whole world is obviated. Our so-called relations are obviated. Whether husband and wife, brother and sister, mother and friends, in the Bhava Jagat, if we are perceiving God as our friend, or we perceive these relations similar to these relations, not the same, Very different. But this type of relations with God, then these worldly relations vanish from our life. They are no more real to us. At the most, they are like shadows or like dream experiences. But then these are what we call partial truths. Because still, the mind, not this mind, but a purified mind is between me and that experience. I see God, so I am there, my purified mind is there, and God is there. Now, there comes a psychological moment when neither I also is intervening. Huh? Mind intervenes higher than mind is I consciousness. The one pole of this bipolar light, that also becomes an intervention. But when I is not there, the object is not there, experience is there definitely. Experience is there. Experiencer, I is not there. Experience of an object is not there, but experience is there. That is the real direct perception. And so, it is not this perception. So, to differentiate it from this pratyaksha and to differentiate it definitely from all other apratyaksha, which you call paroksha, seen by somebody. Now, this direct also is seen by somebody, seen by my mind, seen by my indriya. Even the alokit pratyaksha is seen by me, my mind, purified mind. All this becomes obliterated if the real direct perception comes. So the name is given non-indirect. Because this direct, even the alokik direct, are not fully direct. Something is intervening. Some mediacy is there. In the bhava pratyaksha, the mediacy of a purified mind, mediacy of I is there. Mediacy of these indriyas is not there at all. There are different indriyas there. We feel, see, touch God. That is only purified mind. But the real experience can only be that where there is no mediacy. Experience is there. You will say how? To experience something in the mind, we do not require our eyes, any indriyas. Indriyas cannot reach our mind. Indriyas are outside compared to mind. Are they untrue? Let the West call it subjective. It is a nonsensical word, I tell you. It is direct. I perceive I am happy, and for that I do not require my indriyas. So, seen only by indriyas is direct is not only Western idea, even up to Sankhya philosophy they think like this. So, indriyas do not reach there, indriyas are not wanted there. Now I am coming still nearer to myself. And coming nearer to myself, I get these alokik pratyakshas. There are also some mediacy there. To reach that, I do not require my physical indriyas. I do not require my outgoing mind also, it is an ingoing mind. Now, we go still nearer to ourself. Ourself is the nearest thing. We are not there. We are running outside. In our mind, in our indriyas, in the outside world, that is where we are running. Compared to all of these, the nearest of the near is myself. Their indriyas cannot reach, their mind cannot reach, this I consciousness cannot reach mind. And yet we experience. And there I propose That listening is the only means, that is what Vedas are telling us. And that listening is to be by heart, I told you. Heart is an instrument. Now when the mind is not active, mind is not running here and there, eye consciousness is not active, then that indriya comes into play, that is called heart. Where do I experience myself? Eye consciousness in the heart. Some people think here, here, here. So many places they describe. Do we perceive our eye there? If you ask any person, will you do this work? He says, I will do. Exception in fun, I am telling you. Wrestlers, boxers, they will say, I will do. Their eye has gone into their hands. But a normal person does not perceive his eye here. Does not perceive his eye here or here anywhere. Does not perceive eye on the opposite side. Impossible. Now, this eye, nearer to this eye, nearer than this eye, that is what the scriptures call Buddhi Guha. Buddhi is not intellect there. Buddhi is our both, our consciousness. And Guha because it is hidden today. We are not there. We are not reaching there. When we are in deep sleep, our mind collects back in the heart. So, in Jagrati, how to understand heart? In meditation, we withdraw our mind from outside. We withdraw our mind from going to the Indriyas. Mind comes to its original location. Mind is not split. Mind is not outgoing. Mind comes to its resting place, original place, center, that is called heart. So when I said that one should listen by the heart, somebody has asked me how to listen by the heart. Funnily I say, if you have heart, you will understand. Most of us are not aware of our heart at all. We are so much indulgent in this mind, outgoing mind. So we are not aware of our heart. Gaudpada has proposed in his Mandukya Karika. He said in Jagrati, in waking state, I can give you the experience of the heart. If you close your eyes, outside world is gone, you are within your body here and there. And you are remembering past things. Suppose you close your mind, then memories are gone, and then in meditation you are in your heart. So, now, when any guru tells anything to the disciple, Yajnavalkya talking to Maitri, Shri Krishna talking to Arjuna, everywhere we find one expression, listen, listen, listen to me, listen, listen. Not only listen, Yajnavalkya says, avadharaya, listen attentively, listen meditatively. Meditatively listen. That is listening by heart. Dhaneshwar is describing Dhaneshwari. And he says, all the hearers may please become attentive, may please become meditative to listen this. Some people automatically listen by the heart. Especially when somebody is talking about God, they listen by the heart. So, how to listen by the heart? My answer is twofold. Stop listening by the ears, stop listening by the brain, but listen. And as the illustration I gave you, how to listen Vedanta. I gave you Radha's illustration. Somebody uttered Shamanayam, and Radha is telling her friend, Keba Shinayano Shamanna, Kaner Vitaridia Morame Pashinogo, Apol Korilo Morpran. Friend, who has taken Shaman's name? It has gone through my ears and it has touched my innermost being or heart. And my prana, my life, my heart has become backward to see him. This is listening by heart. So now we proceed. We have discussed today 2-3 points, revise them. One is why it is called Aparokshanubhuti. And in between we proposed one more thing which I did not tell that day. It was not so relevant, but it is important. And that is Alaukika Pratyaksha. And then we have described heart as an instrument of listening and how it comes meditatively. When we stop the vibrations of the mind, when we stop the running of the mind here and there, then without any immediacy we are going to perceive, and that is the title of this book. And Shankaracharya is going to tell us the methods of how to listen by the heart. Shankaracharya is going to give us the methods by which this Aparokshanubhuti is aroused. And Aparokshanubhuti will not be given as a method to listen, it is the final goal. Means are Vedic sentences, Rishi's experience. Rishi's experience, Swami Vivekananda has explained this. When from the Rishi's heart, all the sanskaras are vanished. Sanskaras of our individuality, all the sanskaras gather round I. And when the sanskaras of all past lives are vanished, in Bengali it says, Sanshipta Sanskar Rishi Hridaye. Sanshipta Sanskar, Sanshipta is not abridged here. Gone, vanished, freed from. The sanskaras is Rishi's heart. Vedas automatically reveal themselves. I am quoting from Swami Vivekananda's essay, Hinduism and Ramakrishna. And so, this is what we have to achieve. Now, in the first shloka we found that Shankara bows down to Shri Hari, which is equivalent of Vishnu. Vishnu is Saguna Brahma, all-pervading reality. When we say reality, Saguna, we mean the creator, protector and destroyer of this world, and we take 3 names for the same, Brahman, Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh. Vishnu out of them is the cause of stability of this world, because he pervades this world, everywhere same, and to that we are praying. Shankar is praying. By this praying he is making us pray. By this praying he is showing us that unless we attune ourselves to the reality as all-pervading, cannot we feel the transcendent reality. So through Saguna is the way to Nirguna. That is proved by Shankara going down to Vishnu, and this is, you will see, every book of Shankaracharya is like that. He starts praying to Hari. So, and what is this Hari? In his real nature is Paramananda, absolute bliss. Upadeshtaram, Guru is teaching us. And we accept that Guru knows things. So it is Ishvara who comes through Guru to teach us. And that is why in our country, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma. So, Through him, the things are coming to us. And so, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the only Guru is Satchidananda. Our Gurus are his representations. Through them, he is talking to us. So here, the all-pervading Brahman, called Vishnu, is being called as the teacher. He has, in form of some teacher, has come to us. Though he is the Lord of the world, Ishvara. And Lord, not an extra cosmic God, but he who pervades this world, and he is the cause, both they say Upadana Nimitta Karan, the material and the efficient cause of this, all the worlds which we see, whether earth, heaven, or he is the cause of all of them. To him I bow down. In the second shloka, he told us that aparokshan bhutirvai prochate moksha siddhaye sadvireva prayatnena vikshaniya murmo. So this non-indirect knowledge is being spoken of so that we'll get moksha, so that we'll get liberated from all our bondages, so that we'll get liberated from the necessity to be born again, so that we'll be liberated from all our imperfections, so that we'll be liberated from all our wants and desires. These are our bondages, and that is why aparokshanubhuti becomes equivalent of this moksha. And here he only, in short, he says only good people should again and again see this, listen to this, hear this, so that it takes root in their heart and they come to that. Now, who is this Sadbi? Good people. We call it Adhikari. Though I defined Adhikar in a particular way, normally an Adhikari is one who possesses four qualities. And normally everywhere they are described as Viveka, Vairagya, Shama, Dama, Uparati, Samadhana, Shraddha, Samadhama, Uparati, Titiksha, Samadhana, Shraddha, and Mumukshutva. So they become 4 plus 5, 9. A man who possesses them partially, fully, he is the Adhikari. He can only he can understand even this aparokshanubhuti and experience it. Now, how we are to get this? There, a beautiful, wonderful expression Shankar is giving us here, memorable. Swavarnashrama dharmena tapasa haritoshanat sadhanam prabhavet punsam vairagyadi chatushlayam. One point I wanted to mention here, Shankar starts from Vairagya and then comes to Vivek. Though in general we say Vivek first and Vairagya. That we shall see when it comes to that. Here only I mention it. First, in the modern sense, in the general sense, in the spirit sense, we have to understand Swavarnashrama Dharma. Varna means situation in life compared to the society. Situation in life compared to the nature of our mind. Situation in life compared to our nature of the mind as fitting in this society. That is Varna. Varna means color. Color of the mind. If the mind is Sattva-guna sampanna, if the mind is Rajoguna sampanna with Sattva, if the mind is Tamoguna sampanna with Raja, and we are all overlappers. Very rarely people we see and they say, oh, he is a typical Brahmin. That means he is the only Brahmin. We are overlapping. To explain, the difference has to be explained. Then we have to understand we are overlapping. So the Anuvad of this Swavarna is one's own nature of the mind. But according to the first we undergo training, learning religion, learning righteousness. That is called brahmacharya ashram. Then a normal man, normal means he has desires, he marries and then he lives a life of householder. So that is a different state of life. If he goes to the forest, mentally worshipping everything, that is a different state of life. And if he becomes a sannyasi, unconnected with this world, that is a different state of life. So Varna and Ashram, this is called Ashrama. So Varnashrama Dharma. Dharma means righteous action. Righteous action according to one's state of the mind as in the society, state of the mind as per the growth of the mind, biological and corresponding evolution, not only biological. Many old people will never give up their house. Some people from childhood they give up their house. So this ashrama is the growth, evolution of the mind, not of the body. Corresponds sometimes to the growth of the body, not always. And that duty, that righteous action, we must perform. That is the. And then austerities. The austerities do not mean standing in the water, standing on thorns. No. Austerities means concentration of the indriyas and mind towards the goal of life. Manasascha indriyanam cha ekagram paramam tapa, this is what Shankara tells us. If you want, I am not going to quote it, if you want details of what austerities a man can perform, please refer to the corresponding shlokas in the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Their physical austerities, vocal austerities and mental austerities are all described. Now, we are doing our righteous action according to state of mind and life, and we are also practicing austerities in a normal life, not abnormal austerities. Then what happens? The Lord is pleased. Now, if you want the Vedantic explanation of how this Lord is pleased, Lord is within us. And if we are individuals, very much individuals, consciousness as somehow associated with this body and mind, essentially we become egoistic. Essentially we become narrow-minded. Essentially we become selfish. But we see there are opposite qualities in us. That is due to the universal being inside us. That is called Ishvara Kripa. When the universal Lord residing in us becomes pleased by our unselfishness, by our love of God, by our trying to control ourselves, by our fundamental knowledge, he becomes pleased. Then only we get the sadhan chatushtaya. Somebody asked me, Sri Ramakrishna always talks of without Ishvara's anugrah we cannot progress. Does the Vedanta talk of it? Does Acharya Shankar talk of it? Now here we find Acharya Shankar talking of it. And in Vedanta everywhere this point comes. So, mind you, and then what happens? Ishvara is pleased. So he starts revealing himself to some extent. And then come this sadhana chatushtaya. In that vairagya is first, according to this Aparukshanubhuti by Shankaracharya. Because vairagya has a life force in it. Vivek can become intellectual. Vivek can become intellectual. I know this is real and this is unreal, intellectually. I know this is Nitya and this is Anitya, intellectually. It does not touch me. But if the corresponding spirit is aroused, if this is unreal, I don't want it. If this is unreal, I want to run away from it. If this is not permanent, I don't want it. If this is temporary, I don't want it. Now, if I use as Vivek and then Vairagya, but if this spirit of running away comes, running away is not escapism, mind you. I want to talk a little on this point of escapism. Generally, people in the world, those who try to go to God, people in the world call their escapist. No, just now I described Kant to you. Kant is the escapist. We cannot know what is truth, so let us live in the world. Swami Vivekananda could not do that. Swami Vivekananda said to live in this world without knowing God is vegetating life. So to give up the chase of God is escapism. That is the truth. And we must seek it if we are human beings. Human beings are described. They have the capacity to become sadhakas. And if we are not sadhakas, we are escapist. So this vairagya is not escapism, but we feel an attraction to God. We feel attraction to our own innermost reality. We want to run away from the external world. That spirit has come in us. That will lead to correct Vivek cases. This is a peculiar expression in Aparukshanubhuti. First, the spirit of so-called running away from the unreal, running away towards the real. I will explain this through an illustration, humorous illustration used by Swami Brahmananda. One person, maybe some estate holder or somebody, they call them Raja. So when Raja came, king, and he bowed down before Swami Brahmananda. He had a Sashtanga Dandava. Brahmanji started smiling and said, why such a big Dandavat here? He says, Maharaj, if I do not bow down to you, to whom I will bow down? You are such a big Tyagi. Then Brahman Swami said, oh, because of Tyag you are going down to me. Then I have to roll down before you. You are a much bigger Tyagi. What I have given up, that which is unreal. And what you have given up, that which is real. So are you not bigger Tyagi? This was the humorous way in which Raja Maharaj wanted to tell this Tyaga is natural when the man evolves. So this is Vairagya. And then the proper discrimination shines. The buddhi becomes much better. And then proper discrimination comes in life. We shall see that as we go on. So Vairagya only I explained to you. Chatushtayam, names I have taken, we shall explain as Shankar has explained. And this comes by when the Lord is pleased. So our action, righteous action, corresponding to the nature of the mind, both evolution of the mind and the situation, the qualities of the mind and the evolution of the mind. According to that, we are doing righteous action, and we take negatively very easily. We are not given to cozy life. We are not giving to what in English, Hindi is called aishara. We are not giving to luxurious life. Here I will tell something funny. These days, foam mattresses have come. And sleeping on foam mattresses of our life, then in the old age comes sciatica or arthritis. And then doctors tell him, sleep on the hard bed, stone or wood. So cozy life ends in this. If the man from the beginning had not preferred a cozy life, he could have been healthy. So from this permanency point of view, we should avoid cozy life. We should avoid too much comfort in life. So that is tapasya. And by this, the Lord becomes pleased because he knows the man is coming nearer to me now. And to help him, he gives them all these qualities which we call the sadhana chatushtaya. Now we go to the fourth shloka, where Shankar starts. This was our revision, because after a week we are meeting and we want to explain again and again to catch the spirit. And so this was a revision for the last two classes. Now we read the shloka 4. Brahmadi sthavaranteshu vairagyam visheshu anu yathaiva kakavishthayam vairagyam tadhi nirmalam. In Shankara's words, there is a force. See how he tells about vairagya. If we say kakavishta, the excreta of a crow, do we like it? Do we not despise it? Do we not want to run away from that? Like that we should feel. Now the Brahma is the Lord of the universe. He has his own enjoyment. And the tree has its own enjoyment. In between is man. So Brahma is sthavaranteshu. Sthavara means unmoving. From Brahma up to tree, visheshu, what they feel as objects of enjoyment. Because this point comes, shall we not live in this world? Shall we not? Indriya's work is a different thing, but there is an idea of enjoyment. The subject enjoying the objects. And the objects may be corresponding to Brahma, corresponding to the tree. Man's objects of enjoyment. We should feel despise for them, dislike for them, as we feel for the crow's excreta. This is what Shankar says, vairagya. Here one small point, may not be important, but I feel from my Guruji, the word enjoyment is to produce a repulsion in him. Enjoyment? Be happy. You can be happy. Why you want to enjoy? So enjoy means a subject enjoying the object, and this is what Shankar tells us. When a dislike for this comes, that is vairagya. These days it has been so common. Did you enjoy? Did you enjoy? Were you joyful, you can ask. Whether you were happy, you can ask. Enjoy. Anyway, just a small point, but because I have seen my Guruji, I told it. And tadhi nirmalam, that is the pure vairagya. When all the objects of enjoyment are despised of, starting from Brahma's objects to the tree's objects, we must despise it like the crow's excreta. That is called pure vairagya. Then नित्यम आत्मस्वरूपम हि दृश्यम तद्विपरीतकम एवं यो निश्चयः सम्यक विवेको वस्तुना सवै वस्तुना विवेक. We call it nitya nitya vastu vivek. Sometimes it is called satya satya vastu vivek. Here Shankara has used the word nitya nitya vastu vivek. Atma swarupam nityam. Our real nature is not going to change. It is permanent. Drishyam and what we see as objects, our body even is seen by us. Our mind is seen by the purer people and the world is seen by us. That is viparitagam. That is opposite to permanent, changing and temporary. Kshanabhangur we say. Changing every second. Is a firm conviction. Samyak. Yo evam yo nishchaya samyak. Samyak means right. This is right conviction. When it becomes a right conviction, that is called vastu vivek. The discrimination is this, that my real nature is permanent. Everything else you may say, or that which is an object to me, this changes. Objects we see in the world, but our body is an object, our mind is an object, and we do not want them. That is viveka. Discrimination that the only thing nitya in this world is my real nature. Everything else in this world is unreal, temporary, kshanabhangur, call it unreal or real. That is viveka. Now Shankara has put viveka after vairagya. So when this despising of the objects of enjoyment comes, then this shines. Then this becomes very proper, that my real nature is the permanent thing, everything else in this world is Kshanabhangur. Then we get the 6 qualities called the Shamadhi Shat Sampatti. Shama, let me translate simple. Shama, mental control. Dhamma, physical control. Uparati, not outgoing tendency of the mind. Titiksha, bearing all the duels in this world calmly. Samadhan, putting mind in God. Samyak Adhanam, putting mind in God. Attempt to put mind in God. Maybe Saguna Brahma or whatever it is. And then Shraddha. Shraddha means I do not see God. I do not see my real nature. Rishis see. And not only Rishis see, they are telling me the ways by which I can see. Then let me follow. This much is Shraddha. Shraddha means I do not see, the Rishis see, and they are telling me the methods to see. Let me follow those methods. This much is called Shraddha. Shraddha is not accepting this or accepting that, or just senseless belief is not Shraddha. It is our translation. Now let us see what Shankara is telling. So he is telling now Shama and Dhamma in Shlok 6. Sadaiva Vasana Tyagaha Shamo Yamiti Shabditaha Nigraho Bhaya Vrutti Nam Dhamma Iti Abhidiyate. What is mental control? Mind is continuously desiring something. And out of this vairagya and vivek, always we are giving up desires. Some people ask me in my previous classes, is our life not dependent on our desire? Then I say it is not fit for Vedanta. Unless, Sri Ramakrishna has given a beautiful example. One man, somebody is praising a man who had 16 wives and is giving up one by one. One wife of another man was praising him. The man said, that is not Vairagya. What is Vairagya? Here it is. And he went away. That is Vairagya. So, Shama means giving up all desires. Then mind becomes controlled. What is mind control? See, unique definitions we'll find in Aparukshanubhuti. Of everything which we hear in Patanjali Yoga, here we will find unique definitions of everything. All definitions born out of knowledge. All definitions derived from nature of Brahman. So, Shama, he says Shama is Shabdita. They give the word Shama to that where countries always were giving up desires. In this respect, I will quote our supremely revered Holy Mother. Once her nieces were around her and they are talking randomly. To turn their mind, Holy Mother says, my dear girls, you are all intelligent girls. Tell me, if God comes and asks you what you want, what will you ask? Somebody of them said, we'll ask all the good things of life. Somebody, little evolved, says, we'll ask for bhakti, jnana, vairagya, etc. Like that, they started talking. And they found Holy Mother is keeping quiet after putting the question. So, Auntie, you please tell what we should ask. She said only one thing. Nirvasana. Desirelessness is the only thing one should ask if God comes and asks, what do you want? I want to be desireless. Now, some people wrongly imagine that desireless man is like a stone. No, he has all the feelings. He has love, not only for God, because God resides in all, he has love universal. His feelings are more acute than our feelings because they are not obstructed. So desires have to be given up. That is called mental control, a unique definition here. And then physical control, control of the body and the organs. He says, outgoing tendency should be stopped. Then what is control? Bahya vritti nam nigraho, control of the outgoing tendency. So, Dhamma iti abhidhiyate. That is called Dhamma, where the outgoing tendencies are stopped. What is under control? Indriyas are under control, though it is a mental fact. Outgoing tendency comes in the mind. In the Indriyas also it comes. In the body also it comes. We become restless. Some Indriya becomes restless to go out. Body becomes restless to run here and there. Mind becomes restless and goes through Indriyas and body to outside. He says, if we can control outgoing tendency, then that is bodily control. Like that now, he will describe all the Samadhi Sampatti in this very fashion. We'll continue it on the Friday. Friends, I think this is enough for the day. Our time is up. Otherwise, I could have continued till the no. Om Shri Harim Paramanandam Upadeshtarameshwaram Vyapakam Sarvalokanam Karanam Tam Namamyaham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.